Position. Set. Proceed. Super one. I intend to drop myself in a positive manner. And to avoid anger to the Number two. I intend to drop self-discipline in order to express myself and others. Number two. I intend to use my living life to start being flexible. Help myself, my co-man, and to never be abusive or offensive. Proceed. All right, so as we get into the sword, let's talk about the different parts of the sword first again really quick this week. So three key parts of the sword. We have the bowl for the sword, which we refer to as the saya. The handle of the sword is called the suba, and then the guard, your hand guard, is called the suka, right? So you've got the suba, but suka, or the saya. And when you do that, it's called almost bato. What is it? And then when I shake the watermelon juice off to go play for ninja, that's called shibari. And when I put the sword in, that's referred to as noto, which is also happens when you drop the sword, right? Noto. All right, so now when I have the sword in the scabbard and it's in my belt, blade up, blade down. Blade up, right? So the curve should be up. This way, when I twist my wrist outwards to draw the sword, it slides right up. If it is the curve is down, when I twist my wrist away, it's not going to come out because the curve is facing the wrong direction. Now, you could say, well, why don't you just put it this way and then curve the sword off that way with your wrist, and it'll still draw the right way. However, that's not the way they did it. Samurai, you wouldn't be a samurai. You're doing it wrong. Who knows? Way back in feudal Japan, they might chop your arm right off for doing it wrong. Right? Aren't you nice? Aren't you glad I'm nicer than they were? I'll just be like, hey, put that over. Maybe like, all right, so let's practice. For now, if you don't have one of the ones with the saya, just pretend you do, and so you're just holding on to your hip like this, like that's the home for the sword, and you're drawing it out. So I'm going to turn my wrist out, grab the supa by the suka, and then I bato, right? So draw the sword and think end to the 45. So we're going to do that. And the sword in your arm should basically be kind of like on the same plane, and the blade should be forward, right? You always think one cut, one kill, or we're talking about watermelon, right? So when I see the watermelon come at me and I draw, then I'm chopping it. So I need to make sure that the sword is going in that direction that I would have made a thin cut, right? If I go this way when I pull it out, that means I slapped you with my sword, which could be fun, but it won't cut the watermelon, right? So let's just practice that. Turn the wrist out and bato. Now just turn your wrist so your palm is facing up. And as I do this, I just simply loosen up my grip so the sword drops. And then I bring the sword around. And again, the face of the sword should be forward. The edge of the sword is forward. So almost like if I were to cut another thing, and I'm going that way. And think about if you were to shake water off your hand. If you shake water off your hand, you go like this really slow. No, you're like shaking it. And the whole idea is when I move it fast and it stops, that's when the water comes up. Same with the watermelon juice, right? Once I get to here and I turn my palm up, I'm going fast and then stopping, and that's what gets the watermelon juice out my sword. It's also really good for your grip strength, right? And then it's the back of the sword against the opening of the saya, and I can use my thumb to help guide it. Once I feel the tip of the sword go in, I bring it in just a couple inches, and then the saya comes up the sword, and then I bring it back in, and then we push on it just a little bit. The way a sword is actually made, this little wedge is made to be a little bit wider than the opening of the saya. So when it goes here, it doesn't really go in. They have to tap it to be able to go in, right? With some of the wooden ones that have the scabbard, there were probably magnets on there to give you a little bit of that feel, but it doesn't really open in there well. With these swords, they're usually made a little bit tighter, although I will tell you that, again, it's not made like a $2,000 samurai sword, $200 sword, so eventually that's going to wear out as well, and it'll start getting loose, right? Like the one this solid has in mind, that one isn't as tight as this one. That's fine with this. This is a true. Happy birthday, All right, so let's practice on our own. Do it with me a couple times, then I'll let you go. So push out on the edge with your thumb, turn your wrist outward, plateau. Turn your palm up towards the ceiling, and then bring the sword down fast, and that's Jaburi. The back of the sword goes against your thumb, and your hand stays close to your hip. And then once you're in a couple inches, bring the scabbard up the edge of the sword, and feel it all the way up, and then put it back, and then tap it back into place. Right? So again, push out with your thumb, turn your wrist, plateau. Turn the palm up, Jaburi. And then put the sword back. Slide up, back in, tap it into place, Doto. One last time together, push out with your thumb, turn the wrist outward. Plateau. Turn your palm up. Let the sword make a rotation. Jaburi. Shake the watermelon juice off the sword. Back of your thumb, or back of the blade against your thumb. As you roll it in until you find the opening, slide it up, bring it back, tap it into place, Doto. Practice that a couple hundred times. 100. Keep in mind that mastering the skill takes 10,000 good repetitions. If you get a couple hundred in, you're like a fifth of the way to mastery. If you've done it 200 times well, if you do 200 times bad, you're mastering how to do it bad. But then you have to do it fast. Every hold up, I see this happen a lot. You guys are like, my sword got stuck, right? And here's why. You start this way, and then you get to here, and then you put the flat of the sword against it, and then you try and put it in this way. And so that ends up happening. See how different that looks, right? It's not the flat of the sword against my thumb. I have to rotate my wrist so the back of the sword is against it, and then I rotate the scabbard back out, just like when I threw it, so that it'll slide back up the right way. All right, everybody understand? My wrist can't be flat, and this can't be flat, and so do this every single time, right? I go here at the back of the sword, and then I turn my wrist out, and that's where it'll go back into the other. Okay? Carry on. That's okay. I was. Another quick note, I haven't talked about this detail yet. When you hold on to the sword, these knuckles, like if you're gonna make like a half this knuckle right here should be in line with the blade, right? So when you grab the sword, from here I go and I grab the sword around this way, it's not gonna work, right? So I don't just grab it here, like comfortable. I actually have to, if I turn, I grab the sword. Because if you grab the sword first, you're going to tend to grab it here. Now look how those fingers are in line with the back of the sword, right? So I'm actually going to turn the sword first before I grab. And that puts the sword, the blade in line with the knuckles. Does that make sense, everyone? So they turn and then grab, not grab and then turn. Okay. Carry on. Yeah, so now we drop the blade. It takes a long time. I can do it now, but I used to fight hours. Yes? Good reminder for everyone. So, quick reminder, and then we're going to give another couple moments to actually quick reminder, and then we're going to go into the cups because I want to get into the foundation. Keep focus on where the blade is, right? As I draw the sword, it's important that the blade is forward. Because if it's not, then I slap through the sword. Or whatever. It's not going to be that effective. I want this side of the sword hit. When I do the chiburi, same thing. Instead of the flat coming through or the back coming through, I need to be conscious of where the blade is, right? The blade leads to chiburi. When I put the sword back, I want to make sure the blade is facing up. Because when it goes to my hip, is the blade up or is it down? It's up. The blade should be up when I put it back on my hip. So when I'm putting it away, then it makes sense that I should put it away the way it's going to go away, right? The blade is up. And then I draw, bring the blade back up, and I put it back in. So pay close attention. Okay? From here, we're going to go right into this, some of the cutting and then hit a couple of cutting combinations. So put the sword off to the side, and we're going to go to the vertical cut. We did this one last week. With a vertical cut, keep in mind, as you're holding onto a sword, my right hand is always going to be all the way at the very top, right? My left hand is going to wrap all the way to the very bottom. It's not a baseball grip, right? It's not a chopping tool. A samurai sword is a fine precision instrument. I want to cut across the flesh, right? Not chop across the flesh. So I'm going to hit, and it's going to slide across. As I hit, it slides, not chop right through. Okay? That makes sense? When I do the vertical cut, I'm going to come up, and then as I come down, I extend the sword this way, and I bring my hand in as the sword comes down. And because I'm doing like all those three things at the same time, I'm hitting, there's the push and the pull, the dropping of the sword, and then pulling into my body, and all of those things help to make it slide across whatever it's going to cut. Okay? So I'm here, and we're going to do this in stances this week. Last week we just did it with our feet square. This week I want you to put hard bow stance, left side forward initially. So we're standing this way, which your hard bow will look much better than mine does right now, right? And I'm dropping my knees, and then I'm cutting. I drop, and I cut. I drop, and I cut. And keep in mind, I want it to be that this blade is always the lead, right? That blade is leading. If I do it this way, it's real quiet. Can you guys hear that noise? In the back, you might not be able to hear it past that. I don't know. Now let's do this. Is there a difference? Huge difference. It's like whip versus sing. They call that the sing of the sword, right? That's what I want to try and get to versus this. Now, with the vertical one, you don't hear it as much for yourself. Other people will hear it. You won't because the sound is traveling out. That's why I turned sideways so you can hear it. If I did it this way, you two can probably hear it pretty well, but in the back, you probably didn't hear it at all that time. Right? So you won't be able to hear this one as much. But pay close attention that the blade is what's cutting the air. Up and then cut, right? I'm going to give you like 1 minute. We're going to blitz right through all of this. Left side forward in a hard bow stance. Go! Bend the knees and then kind of stand up as you cut down. Helps to add to that little push pull. But keep your base strong. Weight on both feet. Don't get heavy on the front foot. Make sure you stop before you hit the mat. Fast and stop that. Remember, keep your back foot planted, bend and then stand, but don't come way up on the ball of the foot. Your foot should still be planted on the ground. Now every switch, you put your right side forward. A little bit of a different feel, not much because it's still just a vertical cut. Go. This will all increase your grip strength for sure. Strong handshake, no time. And time to give your grip a little bit of a break, right? So your forearms and hands make it a little sore from doing this. But it's good for you. Gives you a good grip strength. Next one will be a diagonal cut. So the diagonal cut starts very similarly. I start over my head, but now I'm going to drop just to the shoulder a little bit, and then I'm going to come from my shoulder to my hip. Try and think of my right arm extend, my left hand pulls the sword to my hip, right? So I go from here, and I cut across, left hand comes in tight, the right hand's going to come in tight, of course, because it's being pulled in with the left. But the right hand is the one that extends the sword, the left hand is pulling it in almost like the chamber right by that. Right now, we're going to put our right side forward, and you're going to cut from your right shoulder to your left hip, right? So start here, up, drop, right shoulder to the left hip. Good one. Think of it like an X, right shoulder to the left hip. Make sure you don't hit my HEPA filters. Back mat, slide that way a little bit. Good job. Make sure you're still thinking about the blade leading. The blade is what's cutting the air. Now switch your feet and go from your other shoulder. So now I'm going to have my left shoulder, left foot forward. I'm going to go from my left shoulder to my right hip, right? Here up, left shoulder, down to the right hip. Okay? And forward. There. Remember, it should be an X. This isn't a horizontal. This is diagonal from your shoulder to your hip. Time. All right, so now what I want you to do is you're going to start at the back of your square, and we're going to just do the diagonal cut. What we're going to do is you're going to start with your feet shoulders apart. You're going to step forward to the left, and then diagonal cut towards the left. And then you're going to bring the sword back over the head, step forward to the right, and diagonal cut to the right. Actually, take that back. Reverse that. Otherwise, the other side. So you step with your right, and diagonal cut to the left. And then I come back over the head, step with my left, diagonal cut to the right. Back over the head, step forward, cut. Back over the head, step forward, cut. Once I get all the way here, then I'm going to work my way backwards. So I'm going to come up and then cut on the way back. Come up, cut on the way back. Come up, cut on the way back. You should be able to get approximately 3 to 4 cuts in, forward and back. Right? Make sense? Off you go. Go. Diagonal, step, diagonal, step, diagonal. The end of the cut should be at your back hip for this one. For now. So then switch it. So right now we cut to the hip. Step, cut, step, cut, step, cut. Turn around and go backwards. You're still facing the finger. Keep facing it, but then work your way back. But still facing the finger. You're stepping back. Now, go to the head. Step back to the right. Go forward. Step out of the box. Depending on your issue. Make sure you pay close attention to the person in front of you. Because the person in front of you, unless they're a mom, they don't have eyes in the back of their head. That's what mom is doing. Ever notice that? Yeah. You just like, no. How did you even know I did that? Because I'm a mom, I have eyes in the back of my head. You were probably almost better children. All right, so I'm going to go just a couple more minutes because we started a little bit late. And now you're going to go from diagonal to vertical. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to step forward and I'm going to go diagonal cut, keep my stance there, vertical cut, right? And I just keep the momentum going. So instead of cutting, bringing it back and cutting again, I cut, and now I am going to follow through. The sword follows around behind my body, and then I go to a vertical cut. And then I go to the other side. I start diagonal cut, I let the sword continue that path, go to a vertical cut. right? So if we're facing this way, everyone back in the square, and step forward with your right foot forward first. So we drop from the right shoulder, bring it to the left hip on that diagonal, bring it over the head, and go to the vertical. Now step forward with the right foot, bring it over the head, drop to the shoulder, come diagonal to the right hip, stay there as you spin it around and go vertical. And then step to the right foot, and then over the shoulder, diagonal cut, around the body, vertical cut. And then bring it back up, drop to the shoulder, diagonal cut, around the head, vertical cut. And now work that backwards. So now we come up, and I go diagonal as I step back into the vertical cut. Step back with the right foot, diagonal cut, around the body, vertical cut. Bring it up, step back, diagonal, vertical. And then step back, diagonal, vertical. Right? Practice that on your own. You guys looking like Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai in no time. Some of you probably see Tom Cruise a lot. How do you do that? You better have mom and dad watch. Trying to show the difference diagonal and vertical. Like up from the shoulder to the hip and straight down the middle of the body. Make it circular, don't stop and then come back. Follow through. Every watch this, you might be able to see it back from the side, and then we got to wrap up this. When I do the diagonal to the vertical, I step forward, I go diagonal, and now look how the sword doesn't stop that pattern, it just keeps straight on going with that path, right? Instead of me going here, bringing it up and going this way, I go here, it follows that pattern, I don't stop the momentum, right? A real samurai sword could weigh a couple pounds, which a couple pounds doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's actually longer than this, it's pretty weighty. I have a real, it's not a high quality one, but if you ever saw the video I did when I did Fruit Ninja, right? That was a real samurai sword. And the thing was pretty heavy, right? So, and most of the times I was able to just do this, because fortunately they were only doing one piece of food at a time. But if I had to do several, and I had to go from here and pull it back again, it would have been extremely tiresome because of the way that the sword, it would have been very slow. Instead of going from here to here, it would have been faster to go from 1 to 2, right? Everybody follow? So when I'm practicing on things, I come across and then I keep the momentum going to the second cut. I come across, I keep the momentum going to that second cut, right? So we have to wrap it up from here so that I can just keep that up and everything else. So it still is the vertical diagonal. Play around with your swords at home. Make sure there's no lamps anywhere close, or brothers, or sisters, or small dogs, big dogs. And just, think about linking those together. First, get just these down. When I first started playing with this, when we started bringing it into the system years ago, I literally would stand in front of the mirror, not this mirror, the other dojo, for sometimes an hour in a row, and I would do 100 of these. And I would just listen to the sword and make sure that every time I heard that noise, and then diagonal. And if I heard, and I'd be like, and I just pay attention. So every time I could get it there, and horizontal. And every time if it didn't go, then I make sure that I had it. And then I start doing it with combinations. So sing. If I didn't get it, I would do it again, because I wanted to make sure I was doing it the proper way. And so, relax it. Loud and proud as a dedicated student of the martial arts. I will live with the principles of life health. Modesty, courtesy, integrity, self-control, perseverance, and indomitable spirit. What is goal? Position, set, courtesy, out, impact martial arts. Very good. And you guys can be one at a time. Miss Howard, Miss Mahon, Miss Gallia, Mr. Man. to Rich, Rhea, Sunny, Brady Campbell, infamous. I don't know that this is that. Well, there's one there, the other one's fine. You know, just, no, those don't have this. So, yeah. I used to be able to get these ones that have cases, but right now, there's literally no one in the other. Those are the good ones. Are the only ones I can bet. And courts are down. That's the reality of our world right now. Bye, Mom. Bye, Dahlia. And then Rhea, you guys are coming tomorrow at 9:30, right? Live. You should be good to go live the rest of the site. Because I have a couple other people that I have to keep on memorize. You remember. I say it to these guys. So with this class, what are the parts of the sword? So, Sai, Saya, yep. Not Sai, Saya, yep. Suba, and Suka, yep. Suka, Sai. How I remember it way back in the day was, see a son, grab the Suba by the Suka, put it back in the Sai. Suka, Sai. And then draw, it's called Bato. Watermelon juice shake is Chiburi. How they spell it? Oh, no idea. It's spelled with a T. Yeah. But it's not the T. And then actually the chair is probably. Suba is C-S-U-B-A. It's actually like, well, because it's actually Suba, quick T. Suba. Saya is actually like Suba. Or when you go. More fun you can make it, easier it is to come out. So then work on drawing a little bit. And then you guys will probably be able to move through some of the combos a little bit faster. So then the other one too would have been a horizontal cut, which I wanted to give a little bit of a combination with cutting. So I skipped on the horizontal. The horizontal would be very similar. I would just drop a little bit flatter and then come flat across and the elbow stays high. So that way as I get the reach across the shoulders, watermelon, and that's the body. Question, is it seamless or is it seamless? And so then for accommodations, you guys can work on the same thing, kind of setting forward with just one cut into the other cut. Right? And then you go into it two, that's the other side, 1, 2. You actually, but you start doing that, you really put any time. Yeah. Horizontal. Oh.
Reggie, why didn't you let me sort of off and then what did you just here?
With well, it's kind of like this. If I tuck my knee this way, what kind of a kick is it? If I tuck my knee this way, what kind of kick is it? If I tuck my knee this way, what kick is it? Any kick I want. Okay, from here. So I kick from there. little trick, which is something I actually learned from Bill Wallace, when I was talking about the Bill Wallace seminar, and you use what's called the universal law, right? Which is great for fight. But it goes a little bit against traditional martial arts. So this would be kind of the same thing. Once I'm here, you don't know where that sword is about to go, right? You know, from here, I can come down into a diagonal, I can come across here, I can come straight down. Where if I go this way, you know exactly where it's going to go. I'm either coming here, I'm coming here. From here, I could also go this way, right? So I'm set to strike, but you don't know where I'm going. Same thing with this, the universal club. With point sparring, I always do that with point sparring because I could bring my leg up. And then whatever you did, I would be able to. I'm not so much now, but back in the day, I would tuck and then I would kick. And the moment I would tuck, people would do this, and then boom, I'd go low. Right? Or the moment I tuck, they bring their hands in, and I go bam, and then I hit them. Almost did 1, 2.
Do you power on that?
No.
So what was
Point sparring.
Yeah,
I don't need power. They'll just need to hit you.
it wasn't Bill for Wallace.
He was, but that's still super well.
Oh, yeah.
He would make sure 1,000 kicks a day with that. You know, by training for full contact kickboxing, then I would like to get that. And actually now it wouldn't be as effective because now Muay Thai point. Oh, whereas back then, you know, it was all straight kickboxing. You know, so so you know, with there, he didn't have to worry about his leg being swept out, you know, or anything else. And if I went here, all you do worse than you possibly do is jam it, right? In Muay Thai, I bring my knee up that high, you're just going to like, wham! And put me right on my back, you know. So big difference.
I realized kickboxing was a different back then.
Oh yeah, it was initially when kickboxing first hit the circuit, you saw really well where a lot of the point players came because they had that initial speed and the payoff. And there was a lot of, you know, it was like, you know, the Super Bowl Wallace, he didn't have a traditional, he had a point scoring stand. He would fight, he would be like this on the outside. And because from here he hit more than, he had more knockouts than any. Most kickboxing knockouts that he had not. In fact, they used to have a minimum kick rule because guys wouldn't kick. They would just try not to kick. Yeah. You know, and the reality is statistics show that I'm going to knock you over punches, not kicks. So there was like a 5 kick rule. But initially, I think it was like 7 kick rule. So you had to get 7 kicks in and around, you lost points. And then it went to like 5 kicks, and then they just did it. They weren't like, no, my body didn't seem like kicks back then. Because it wasn't Muay Thai. Muay Thai really had the moment. You know, the 70s. I mean, there were probably people doing Muay Thai, but it wasn't what was popular. Back in the 70s, people like TP Kevin, he was the outlier. Different work. He'd show up to tournaments, he'd have on, you know, sweatpants and a t-shirt from school, throw a belt on, because he wanted to wear or whatever. Miss Patel, did I give you this word yet? Catch. Or a cop. How are you here? Hi. Guess what I found out today? Good news? Well, I mean, it's just news. We have to have, as of January 26th, when you travel internationally, even as an American citizen, we have to come back into the U.S. with a negative we have to get tested. They have to be tested in body before you can get us home. And then after we land, we have to get tested. No, we have to come, well, we probably have to get tested. But in order to get into the U.S., after January 26th, you have to have a negative test from the origin of the break. So when you leave body, we have to go through the negative test. I don't know, 20 minutes, but it's the same thing. Going body now, we have to have 48 hours. Yeah, 48 hours, we have to have a negative test.
only thing that I might have benefit from is having immunity here. But even that is, oh, because you're right. Yeah. But even that.
No. Yeah, I love cool. Yeah, that doesn't. Almost that.
We get this side, you get the other side.
Yeah, you can have this.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Hi, children, come with me. Miss Patel, you can go right here to the desk. We repo cards.
Oh, yeah, they should all be fun.
And your new card, you have a new card? And, and on your side, you have to get rid of this. And then I can wait.
Oh, cool.
Burton.
Anchor. Number one.
I intend to develop myself in a positive manner and to avoid anything that would reduce my growth or physical health. I intend to develop self-discipline and work to invest in myself and others.
I intend to use what I learned in class constructively and flexibly
To help myself and my fellow man and endeavor to be useful for others. Thank you, sir.
So,
And
the names of the parts of sword, so the gathered or a piece of it, they call it style. The handle, or the book, and then the guard, is called the piece. Sure. Take our.
oh, you already started the talk. All right, you guys can jump over that way. But actually, how about if you share? You jump on.
Way of the sword.
Now,
Yes,
yes,
yes, you want to wait for.
they show over there.
Yes, do your hair now, yes. You take them here, start, and we use our thumb. We open, that's it.
And then, you want to step up with that. You'll do that. So,
And there, you do that again, and you turn it like that. And the thing like this, but they won't, they'll have to put it in, and there we grab, you do it about.
oh, you do it. You do it on the yeah, oh, you have at least that first section. Okay, so let's do the first section. So we start off the wow. And then it will be long forward, chain with the right hand, left hand hits the palm or the base of the knuckles. And then I step forward with my left thumb. I step forward with the left foot, it does that.
Now, wait,
And then I step forward with the right foot, so I put the hands over the bottom. And I step back right foot, and then one foot is a kick it in. Right, to review that again, we're going to step to the left, put the left hand on right palm, with the right knuckle, and then step to the right. If you put the hand over, you can back to the right, don't have to left and shake it again. Step to the left foot in the horse hand, and you bring your hand, and then you shower with the right hand underneath. You're gonna do a front kick with the right hand, spear, and then you step to the right foot, elbow, and then you'll spear chop, outward block, and the left hand, tiger claw, right hand at the barrel, and circle set, and rock up. And then step out and right, you run, bridge hand, chop and down, front kick spear, elbow left, elbow right, if you drop the sword, get the spear left, outward block hammer fist, and now the tiger claw now move to the right hand, back up. So you do that section a couple of times.
Very dangerous, Jack.
And step to the left, again to the right hand, put the hand over the bow, and step to the right, step back right left, kick with the knee. Step to the left, bridge hand. Front kick spear, elbow, spear chop, and outward block hammer fist. Back or back to tiger claw.
And back.
Circle tiger step on the left, step out to the right. Bridge hand, chop, front kick spear, elbow, spear chop. Outward block hammer fist, back to tiger claw. And walk through again, set. And bow, step back, bridge hand, chop, front kick spear, elbow, elbow, spear chop. Power block, hammer fist, back to side block, step up, circle back, step to the right, reach hand, chop, front kick spear, elbow, elbow, spear chop, power block, hammer fist, back to side block. So, practice that a couple of times, let's see it, ready, set. And start with the bow. Reach hand, chop, double spear, elbow, elbow, spear chop, power by hammer fist, back to squaw, step to set. Step to the right, reach hand, chop, spear kick, elbow, elbow, spear chop, back to double block, and do it again. 2 more times on your arm.
Actually, is this still the sword one, or did you start tempo?
Oh, I did that.
Ah,